Alright, we're gonna real quick talk a little bit about tuning pegs, and then probably talk a little bit about doing our string nut. See what other trouble we can get into. I've installed two of the tuning pegs. Um, I'm going to show you the last two. Um, the first two I've got put in. I've kind of put the last one in loosely. Our tuning pegs are like a two-step peg. It's got a grommet, and then the peg goes through. The grommet basically just sits down in the hole. And if you remember when we drilled them out, it was a two-step hole. It was like a 5/16 on top and a 1/4 inch all the way through. The top peg just basically pushes down in, and I'm going to use a rubber hammer to set it the rest of the way down in. And then from the back side, we'll set our peg down in. I'm going to turn this around so you can see it maybe better. Yeah, that's the screen. Then from the back side, we just put our pegs in. And like I said, I've already installed these two. These two I've still got to put in. And then, so you don't twist off the screws, I pre-drill them. Just kind of set them up so that they're straight. And I suppose you could check them with a square, but I just eyeball them. I pre-drill the holes because it is a hard maple. If it were a softer wood, I suppose you could just try and run the screws straight in. But that hard maple, those little screws, they will twist off. So I recommend you pre-drill them. And then just simply run your screws down in. And you could run them in by hand if you want, but I'm a power tool guy, so the less I can do with my hands, the better off my chances of staying away from carpal tunnel again. Alright, tuning pegs. Easy enough. Okay, our string nut. We used a hardwood nut on this. You can use bone, you can use graphite, there's all kinds of things you can use out there. We use scraps of wood because we got tons of it. As long as it's a good hardwood, for most guitars and ukuleles and such, you're all right. As long as you get your spacing out okay, you're all right. There's a lot of formulas you can use in math and such. Stuart McDonald makes a really cool tool. I don't remember what we paid for this, but it will devise out most any string spacing for any instrument. And the cool thing is you know, you can line up the outside edge, and then depending on the number of strings you want, it'll show you the even spacing. And the cool thing is the way that works is when you line up the outside edge, depending on the number of strings you want, it'll show you the even spacing, and then all you got to do is just kind of mark it. And I've got a little piece of tape laid out for our spacing, so once you've got it on there, you just go right back over the top and just mark it. It's easy as that. And kind of hard to see on that dark wood, but once you've got it on there, you go back through. Now cutting it down in, again, Stu Mack makes some really cool gauged saws. Now ukulele strings are kind of heavy, so this is like a .030 gauge saw. They've got them that run from a .010 on up in a set, and then they also have some gauged files that you can get. Of course, you can buy some needle files as well that are round bottomed, so your strings sit down in a nice round slot that are different gauges, like 0.026, 0.0232, and you can buy some nice files. They're less expensive. Just little needle files like such, the hardware stores and such, that that you can use as well. But this is a really nice way to cut your nut in, because it's gauged, and it'll do a really nice job of laying that right down in where you want it. You can also use like the little Japanese pull saws. Now I don't really go too far down in, because I'll go back, I just kind of get the nut started where I can set my string in, and I'll go back in and set my action later once the strings are in it. Right now I just want to get it in there so that I can get it strung up, and I will go back and set the action at the nut later once it's strung up. Right now my purpose of cutting the nut in is just purely to locate my strings. Now while I've got my spacing nice and handy, I'm going to transfer this spacing to a piece of wood that I will use in my my bridge piece. I've got my bridge that will set in my cone, and this spacing will need to be the same, so I'm going to transfer my string spacing from my nut to my bridge piece, and I'll trim this piece up on the bandsaw in just a little bit. But I can go ahead and do that, and I'll go ahead and make a small nut or a notch into the nut piece while I've got my saw out, and I've got my spacing already done. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this little segment down here and set up. We'll probably, next thing we'll do is we'll put in our volume pot and our jack, and maybe wire up our Peugeot for our biscuit going under our thing. We'll do our electronics, I think, next. We're getting close.